We're going to get started. We have an hour here, and I want to use that time to allow our generous alumni to share experiences during the pandemic and a little bit about their careers. So what we'll do is if questions come up, we can use the chat to address those. In the meantime, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Ann Mansfield. I am a job developer at the junior college, and I work in the Career Hub. And so all spring, we have been delivering events to our students, community members, and alumni. So you are part of one of those events, and I really appreciate you being here. So thank you to all the people in the room who decided to take today from 5 to 6 and be part of this. And I will have Sarah introduce herself now.
Hello, everyone. As Ann mentioned, my name is Sarah Lakis. I'm actually the Director of Philanthropy for the SRJC Foundation. And one of the roles that I play is to connect alumni like these great panelists that we have here and community members with ways to support and give back to our students. One of them is through our mentoring program, which we offer online for the most part right now, but then also inviting alumni to participate in these types of activities to share, give back, provide insight about careers, career paths, jobs, industries, all of that. So we're super excited to have you here today. We are recording this so that other folks can see it. We call these our Bear Talks. So obviously SRJC's mascot is the Bear Cubs, and these are our Bear Talks, opportunities for our alumni to talk to our students and give back with some great insight and advice. So Ann's going to lead us through today's session.
Thanks, Sarah. So what I'd like to do is have all our alumni panelists just do a brief intro on, where you're working right now in the field and your occupational title and maybe how long you've been in the field. So why don't we go ahead and start with Kevin?
I'm Kevin Snyder. I SRJC class of '84. And I currently am the interim senior director of the JC's IT department. And I've been back with the JC for about 2.5 years.
Thank you. Okay, Marissa.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marissa Georges. I currently work for County of Sonoma Human Resources. I'm the executive secretary for the HR director. And I've been in HR for probably the past 10 years or so. Thanks for having me.
Okay, let's go on to Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Brooks, and I am currently working for Joseph Phelps Vineyards over in St. Helena. And I've been in the accounting industry pretty much my whole career.
Thanks, Karen. And Goretti.
Hi, everyone. Goretti Hamlin. I am currently the HR director at Pizzoni and Brinker. It's a local public accounting firm. I've been in HR for a long time, 25 plus years. And prior to my current role, I was the HR director at Amy's Kitchen. So I've dabbled in manufacturing. And prior to that, also worked within the HR space, but for a bank. So I've had a bit of different industry experience.
Great, thank you all. So again, we can use the chat if people in the room have some questions. Sarah's going to be monitoring that, but feel free, to raise your hand if you'd prefer to do that. We can easily address questions that way, whichever you prefer. So how we're going to do this is I won't ask every panelist every single question because we just don't have time for that. So I think what I'd like to do is I will put the question out there and maybe just call on a panelist to address that question. And then we can also do some follow-up if somebody else is interested in, giving their perspective or their point of view. So I'm going to just start with given the fact that you've maintained your career and positions during the pandemic, I'll start with Goretti. What are the skills that you've relied on to be successful in the changing environment?
A tremendous amount of resilience. I think the last year has brought unprecedented changes, and it's been a very different disaster, so to speak, than anything that we've dealt with, even within the Sonoma County community. So from an HR perspective, really maintaining a firm grasp on my own resilience, but on connecting others to theirs. Never before have I had to leverage my emotional intelligence as much as I have in this last year. And then also change agility, which is really hard when you work with accountants. But it's been really, it's been insane. I started off, like, my first disaster that I ever had to deal with in my professional career was 9/11. I had branches at the bank that I worked with that were in New York, and I remember feeling like this was like life altering. And in a sense, it very much was, but it was an event that happened. And then, although the recovery was hard, there was a clear path forward. The wildfires were similar to that, where it was catastrophic. And it's very much a defining point. It's before wildfires and after, but there was a clear path forward. And with COVID, it's been a constant year of just uncertainty. So I think encouraging my employees and my team to acknowledge that, and to acknowledge that a lot of the things that come up as it pertains to performance, to behaviors, to reactions in the workspace have far more to do with that individual's space and where they're at because of the constant trauma versus, they're just not performing.
Thank you. Do we have somebody else who wants to add to that on the panel?
It was really well said.
Any particular skills outside of what we heard that you relied on, Karen, in your role?
Skills, I relied on Zoom and Microsoft Teams. And that's how I got trained, because when I started, we were not working, we weren't working in the office. And so when they brought me on, I went straight into working from home. And so that's how I was trained. And it worked out fine because they were really good trainers. So yeah, it was fine.
All right, let me go to Kevin. Describe how your work shifted at the start of the pandemic. What did you need to go into as far as the challenges went? What additional technology tools did you utilize, and how did you support your team?
Well, that's a question well suited to me. When in March a year ago, we had almost nobody working from home, and we had very little infrastructure and very little process or technology that was ready for that. We had to learn a lot on the fly and very quickly. For example, one of the things that came up for us was if people were going to work from home, there were people that, for example, there were counselors who needed to talk to students, and they didn't want students having their personal phone number or even their direct line from work. So we had to come up with a tool, which luckily we actually caught a break. We actually had a tool that was part of an unused part of some software that we weren't even using. Nobody knew anything about it. So within a week, we had to learn how to use this tool. We had to ramp it up. We had to start figuring out how we were going to get it installed on people's computers and get them to work from home and be able to talk on the phone through their computers to people. We worked with our media services folks to get Zoom up and running. We didn't have nearly enough licenses. Then we realized, wait, people need to log in remotely and get to their stuff on campus. We're not set up for that. People didn't have VPN clients or remote access clients. So we had to scrounge up hundreds and hundreds of laptops from all over the district, which were usually student laptops. We had to re-image them so that they would work for our people working from home. And it was an amazing scramble. Our team did an incredible job with that. We worked long, crazy hours, and we learned a lot, and we made mistakes, and we found, months down the road, oh, well, we should have done it that way. But we just had to get people working. And so, yeah, we had to use every tool in our arsenal, all of the Microsoft tools, all the Microsoft Office, Jabber for phone calls, Zoom for messages. As you can see from what we're doing right now, Zoom has become the big dog in communication for the district. And without us getting these Zoom licenses up and running, we'd be dead in the water, honestly. So that was a big part of what we ended up doing. It was a heck of a scramble.
Mhm. And I can speak to it because being on the campus, it was really remarkable how IT really was, the stabilizer for everything that was happening, and incredibly responsive during the time period. It was remarkable. I'm wondering, what do you think the biggest successes were while you were rolling all these things out?
Well, honestly, for me, it was the Jabber. We knew we had people needing to make phone calls, and we had some of the other technology that we already knew how to use. It may not have been utilized in the volume that had been used, but we were familiar with the tool. But none of our people had worked with Jabber. It was just something it came with the license sort of thing. But nobody had any need for it. So we realized we had about a week to learn how to deploy this tool. And that was one of my favorite parts of what we did, how quickly we were able to get teams assembled to learn the tool. We had multiple people having to work with it, and figuring out how to get it on every machine immediately, basically. And so I think, to me, that was the one thing that sticks out in my head, is how we didn't just ramp up an existing tool, but we took a whole new thing and learned how to do it, learned how to deploy it, learned how to teach other people how to use it with no advance notice at all. So it was that I was really, really impressed with what our team was able to do.
Amazing. I'll take the question to Marissa. If you can talk about, how did you go into the challenges? What were some of the successes? How have you supported your team when you had to transition or pivot to virtual?
Sure. I could have used Kevin's help along the way, but one of the commissions I support in human resources is called the Civil Service Commission. And we were used to holding in-person meetings and hearings of discipline. And when we transitioned due to COVID, we had to figure out what platform to use, whether it be WebEx or Zoom, and then set up all of the logistics of the hearing. So getting outside counsel or witnesses, the Zoom links, making sure they had the correct technology. I did several tests with people to make sure they were able to connect and test the volume and make sure their background's clear. All the little details that I never thought about before, I really worked through with people. And another challenge that came up for me, especially in our HR department, was the human connection. We're missing being around each other and having those in-person meetings. We used to do a lot of potlucks and employee engagement events, and we couldn't do that anymore. So we're trying to be creative in how we meet. I know Zoom fatigue is a thing. We're on Zooms all day, and then we have Zooms at night. But one of the events I created was a Zoom happy hour. So after hours, if you wanted to, employees could log on with your favorite cocktail and discuss, non-work related things. So I'm really excited we're able to open up a little bit, and it seems like we'll be able to see more people in person. So that's really great.
Mm-hmm. Marissa, I'm going to stick with you for a second. Given where you are at the county, we do have a lot of students and community members who come to us that are very interested in working for the county. We've held workshops just about the whole application process for the county and have a nice relationship with working with the county ourselves through Sonoma County Job Link. But can you describe your background and kind of the progression? Because I know that it is an area that we've got a lot of interest when we're meeting with people.
Sure. So I started in customer service and an entry-level human resources position. And then I applied for the executive secretary job in HR. And for me, I had to apply to several different positions and interview for several positions before I got into the county. I know the process can be overwhelming and take several months, but I encourage anyone in the audience who's interested, you can email me. We have a Start Here course, which is put on by HR, and it walks through each step of the process and how to get into the county. If you're interested in that, I highly recommend it.
And for any of the panelists that are open to that, we would love for you to put your contact information in the chat so anybody can retrieve that if they're interested in contacting directly. So Karen, let us hear about your educational background, your progression, and how you got to be where you are at the winery.
Well, I started at the junior college right out of high school, and then later on, I decided I wanted to get my bachelor's. So I went back to school, and I was in Southern California and went to a couple of JCs, and then I ended up at USC, and I got my degree in information technology and ended up with a job in San Francisco. So I worked there for several years, and then I had a family, and so I wanted to be home. And so I left working full-time and I had a bookkeeping business that helped me, during the time that I wasn't working. And then I ended up working at the junior college at the foundation office for 7 years, which was great. I loved it. But then I moved to New York and decided I was going to start over and it didn't work out. So we moved back, my daughter and I moved back, and I started job hunting, and Joseph Phelps had openings, and I was going through Nelson and Associates, and I went over there for an interview and I got it.
It's a great example how, when we're having career discussions with students and community and alumni, people have to understand that there are so many chapters and so many ups and downs. And that's I think has been at least the exciting part of my career, is not always knowing what's around the corner and taking risks. Clearly you did that, by moving, and but it really helps build your profile. It gives you a lot of different perspectives. So I think it's a great for people to hear that you can, continue on in your field and experience growth and in a lot of different environments.
Yeah.
Reddy, how did you get to where you are?
It's really kind of funny. So when I was in high school, I had extra credits, so I essentially had 2 free periods at the end of my day. So while in high school, I went to the Career Center to look for an after-school job. And I was hired by the mortgage company to be essentially an HR assistant. And that is how HR entered my life. And then it just kind of stuck. So I was a non-traditional student in the sense that I didn't go straight from high school immediately into college. I worked a little bit and then went back and studied while I worked full-time, but I worked my way up. Went from being an HR assistant and doing all of the filing and all the things to being promoted to HR receptionist and then coordinator and rep, and off I went. So not terribly exciting. I would love to, I was just joking with my husband a couple of nights ago that I need to like reinvent myself. So I'd love to do something crazy, but my life choices so far have been fairly on the same path. And other than, I think if someone is really interested in pursuing a career in HR and advancing within the profession, I very much encourage additional certifications on top of education. So things like the PHR or the SPHR, which is the longest standing professional certification, or the more recent certification through the Society from Human Resources Management. It's some industry recognition that speaks to your expertise and your commitment to your career.
Thank you. Before I go to Kevin to describe his background and career progression, is there anybody that has any questions for the three panelists about how they got to where they were, or the path they followed in terms of their academics or vocation? Anybody have anything out there that they wanted to ask?
I do. I do. I have a question. Goretti, would you encourage someone to go into HR right now, where things are at? And not to put you on the spot, but I'm currently teaching and exploring business careers. And as we know, there's certain pathways that are changing and altering. So I was wondering what your feelings are on that.
That's so funny. I have enough filters on my Zoom that I shouldn't look too battle weary, but it has been a rough year in the profession. But to answer your question in all seriousness, absolutely, absolutely. But I think it's really important that there is more clarity around what human resources is. It is absolutely not the principal's office, the police officer, the only compliance focused. It is truly a business partner within an organization, and the opportunity to influence the business is super strong, and it is from the most powerful perspective, which is the broader people and business perspective. I think HR professionals bring a very powerful voice to the table, but it is something that we as HR professionals need to lean into and be more comfortable with. Not unlike any other profession right now, I think HR is going to have to redefine itself and reinvent itself. And there is very much a need for the high compliance side of it, and it is critically important. But there's the stronger need for the, in my opinion, for the other side, which is the business partnership, the more innovative, forward-focused approach that allows for businesses to grow and to develop the culture that they need to thrive, and to ensure that their employees feel like they're in an environment that fulfills their need, especially in Sonoma County. It is really hard to retain and recruit professionals to this county. It has been for a long time. I've been a Sonoma County professional for the bulk of my career. I've also worked in the East Coast, but in the past it was just because of cost of living. Now it's because of cost of living and wildfires. So businesses that are in this community really need to look at the full employee experience in order to be successful. And HR professionals play a key part of that.
Thank you. Okay, Kevin, can you tell our group a little bit about your educational background and your progression, how you got into the position that you're in and what that took as far as your degree?
Sure, it's a study in illogic anyway, so I'm happy to share. It's So I went to Santa Rosa High, grew up in Sonoma County, went to the JC, thought everything was cool. Every class I took, I ended up changing my major. So I had 5 or 6 majors during college: anthropology, astronomy, computer science briefly, English, and ended up actually transferring to UC Santa Barbara and got a degree in music. Back in the day, I was a classically trained tenor. Now I just try to get through a sentence. After college, I ended up, all through college, I had worked in retail jobs, mostly bookstores and things like that. So I ended up being an assistant manager at Walden Books, and then got another assistant manager job for PacSun. And I was working down in Southern California, and eventually got back up here, but I did not like retail management. It was just not my thing. I wasn't enjoying the experience. Saw an ad in the paper for, you can work for the state, steady benefits, pensions. I'm like, ooh, that sounds good. Sounds stable. And so I worked for State Compensation Insurance Fund for 28 years and did all sorts of crazy stuff. I started as a claims adjuster for 9 years. And after 9 years, I was ready to move on from that because you end up fighting a lot. I'm a lover, not a fighter. I didn't want to, every phone call was a fight. Everything was a scrap. Got tired of it. And the guy sitting in the cubicle to my left said, hey, I'm getting a job as an IT manager down in San Francisco. And if I get the job, which I think I'm going to, the first thing I'll do is I'll hire you. Are you interested? Like, well, I'm a nerd. Yeah, okay, that's better than doing this. And, I'll figure it out. So without any experience in IT, I ended up learning how to do programming languages and doing debugging of programs, and ended up being a systems administrator for Unix servers, and ended up spending years managing firewalls and VPNs and things like that, which is how I got into the security, the data security line, and did that for about 13 years. Spent a little time in policy and enforcement, and then I was asked to run our new threat vulnerability management, basically looking at all of our servers and saying, okay, where are the vulnerabilities? What do we need to patch? Things like that. The problem was that it became a dead end gig, and there were other political issues going on at State Fund after that. And I started getting itchy a little bit. I'm not happy here. Do I want to leave after 28 years? And again, as I was just sort of getting interested, very serendipitously, just as I started looking, I saw this ad for a network security person at the JC. I'm like, wait, that's my alma mater, 10-minute commute, CalPERS, doing something I already know how to do. And at the JC, my parents went to the JC. I went, my brother, my wife got her RN degree from the JC. My son one of my sons currently goes to the JC. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is like storybook. So I came in and I'd never studied or worked so hard for an interview in my life. I sucked my gut in, wore my good suit, and my only suit. And I guess I sufficiently dazzled them. And so I worked as a network security manager here for about a year, at which time the senior director I'm trying to find the right verb. He's no longer working for the college. He's working at a different college, different California community college down on another project, San Diego. And so the next question was, okay, who is going to step in for him on an interim basis? And the other 3 managers very rapidly took a step backwards, and I wasn't paying attention. And I'm like, well, I'll give it a shot. I mean, I'd done retail management years and years ago, but I'll give it a try. And I am really thoroughly enjoying the experience. It's different from anything I've done before. I've had to learn new skills and exercise muscles that I didn't know I had. And Grady, I think it was you who called attention to emotional intelligence. And I've really had to leverage patience and being a good listener and emotional intelligence and developing political chops that I didn't know I was going to need. And So so as you can see, it was, I went from being a music major to being an IT director, and you never know how you're going to get from point A to point B. Sometimes things present themselves and, you have to decide whether to take a leap, and I'm glad I did.
Awesome story. Thanks, Kevin. Fascinating. For sure, the political chops. I will agree with that. That is not something you see in other arenas coming from business. That you just
Very true.
didn't know that was a thing. But great experience that you've had, and really interesting and reassuring to know that, if you are exploring fields, that's a good thing, because a lot of people feel that it must be a linear path, and that it's hard to, reimagine or redefine or figure out what you want to do until you've had some experiences to help navigate that and hone it. So
Big fan of staying curious. I think it's important.
100%. Yeah, I agree with that. So Marissa, I want to go on a little bit different path here and find out from you, if you were going to be interviewing people for a job at the county, what sort of skills do you think are ones that really stand out in terms of qualifications and just helping people understand what they should be highlighting during interviewing for the county? What are some of the things that you think are important that people should be communicating or coming across in terms of their strengths?
I think it's really important, if you're applying for the county, to read the job application with the minimum qualifications and what skills are desired, and then highlight those skills that you have and really speak yourself up. I know this is something that I struggle with when I'm interviewing. It's hard for me to take credit for things that I've done in the past, but it's really important to sell yourself, and you are great and you do deserve this job, and you need to let everyone else know that, because this is the first time they're meeting you. I also would, to help prepare, one of the things that I do is I have a few examples of either customer service interactions I've had, or difficult customers I've dealt with, or whatever job you're applying for. I think it's important to focus on what you think the ideal candidate would be, and then sell yourself to that. And all the information really is in the job description, especially for the county. I'm sure other businesses as well. There's a lot of information in there.
If I can add, the best thing that you can do to position yourself to be a really good candidate is to take the time to read that job posting or the job description that's posted. There's nothing that will hurt you as much as walking into an interview with it being super clear that you didn't even look at it and maybe just looked at the summary section. But there's also nothing that will prep you better for even the questions that they may ask than what's already in there, because most interviews are based on what the essential skills and responsibilities are for that role. So really taking the time to do your research, read the ads, read about the company is super important.
What would you say, Goretti, is aside from sort of the under preparation of a candidate, what other things are kind of missteps that you've seen in interviewing?
I mean, a lot of it is the prep. The prep is the real work. I think pre-Zoom, timeliness, kind of that presentation when you walked into the meeting or the interview was important. With Zoom, timeliness is also important, and really taking care of your box. Doesn't really matter what's happening outside of your Zoom box, right? So making sure that you're business ready from the waist up, making sure that your background is appropriate and gives the best representation of who you are and what you may bring to a work environment. We did all of our college recruiting virtually this last season. And I can't tell you how many of our students had like things we didn't want to see in their background. And it's hard to unsee certain things. Like I can ignore open closets, but there's other things that, you know, it's harder to unsee. So it's really, in a Zoom environment, it's super important to take care of your box.
Excellent advice. Karen, what do you think about the skills that are the most important for people to know about when they're going in for their interview in terms of preparation?
So I think it's really important to bring yourself looking professional and to have a really upbeat attitude when you come, really positive, and to know what you're going for, because they will ask you questions that you need to be able to answer. And other than that, I'm not sure. I'm not very good at answering questions. Sorry, guys.
Oh, no, that's great. I mean, it is important to, I think, to be prepared to exude energy,
Yeah.
to be upbeat. I absolutely agree. It's a draining experience, and to just, continue to present yourself in an excited, enthusiastic way. Actually, that's probably the first piece of advice that I do give people, because if you're positive through this experience, then, your messaging, you're going to be positive in the next experience. So I think that's excellent advice. Let me ask you, Karen, what do you think has changed in your field over the last couple years? And maybe what's the career outlook, do you think, in your field for people who are looking to get into your field?
Well, I think that my field is very wide open, and a lot of opportunities in it. I don't know about, what was the other question?
How is it changing?
Oh, how is it changing? Well, everybody's doing a lot remotely, so that has definitely changed what we would normally be doing. And but I am going back in the office 2 days a week next week, so that'll be my first time actually working in that office. But it's a really good field. I think that if anybody wants to find a job in it, you won't have a problem, as long as you have the skill set and the education.
Kim put a question in the chat. Do you want to address that, Kim, a little bit?
I just, because this comes up a lot in our office with students that complete their certificate or their AA, and they're not necessarily planning on moving on to a 4-year degree. Would you still encourage them, if they do have, let's say, internship or hands-on experience, to still apply, even if they don't meet that minimum qual of having that bachelor's?
Is that a question to me?
To anyone on the panel that would like to respond.
Yeah,
well, I would say that, to me, even if they don't meet the minimum qualifications, what I would look for, beyond the technical skills, you're going to get a lot of resumes, and they're all going to be, oh yeah, I know how to do that, I qualify for that, and you can ask them technical questions. But if I see someone who doesn't have any degrees versus someone who at least has an associate degree, an associate degree to me is an accomplishment. Somebody, there's a goal achievement there. And so to me at least, there's a psychological factor to somebody completing something they start. And so for me, if I saw that You know, if I saw that, or I'm 3/4 of the way to a bachelor's degree, I would actually put some weight on that completion. And so that would mean something to me. And I would also say that for me, I mean, I work in a technical field, you know, literally information technology, but I have to say that for me, I forget who said you have to sell yourself. The soft skills, the people skills, the ability to communicate is really, really key. Coming in with that positive energy, but being able to articulate why you're the right person, because you really are selling yourself. You're going against 10 people that all know how to do the job. So how do you reach out and convince that person that, oh, I got to hire that guy. I got 10 people that can do the job, but that person right there, that person I want to work with. Because there is that factor of I want to work with that person, and that's the person I can work best with, even if they don't have the most skills, honestly. And that's coming from someone who runs an IT department. You can train people to do tasks, but the ability to communicate, the ability to work with people, that's something that's way harder to teach. So when people come with that skill, you reach out and grab those people.
I think that also, oh, sorry, that also goes with Tracy's dropped a comment or question in there. Grady, I think you may have seen that. So if you want to leave those together.
I was going to build off of what Kevin said and connect it to Tracy's as well, because I couldn't agree more with Kevin. And I will say this is my professional opinion, maybe a combination of professional and personal. In an environment like the county where there's unions and certain other requisite structure in place, it may be different. So please know that this is coming from a non-union, more private industry environment. I cannot tell you how many times I have had to terminate the best technically qualified person that we hired because they just were not a good people fit. It has happened so many times. So again, personal opinion, but what I will tell you is that a job ad and the required things for that position, that is an employer's wish list. It is no different than our wish list when we talk about, I don't know, whatever, our New Year's resolutions or whatever. That is what you would love to see. That isn't necessarily what they will end up hiring. What they will end up hiring is the person that demonstrates the qualities that have been successful in their environment. Those don't necessarily equal a business degree unless that profession calls for it. For example, I can't hire an accountant that doesn't have a degree within a certain section of business because I need them to have a CPA license, and the CPA license requires 150 credits within a certain field, right? But for a different role in a past life, whether it was HR, whether it was IT, whether it was manufacturing, whether it was operations, I can't tell you the times that I hired someone that maybe had half of the things on the list because they had demonstrated the ability to learn and consistently apply those skills. So the best thing that you can do is really specifically and clearly communicate what you are good at and what you have been successful at, and create a bridge to what they're looking for. So if you haven't had, I don't know, direct management for a project and they're looking for project management skills, talk about how you led a school project. And that is especially important with college students because you may not have a ton of professional experience, meaning in a business type environment, but you have a ton of transferable skills from managing your schoolwork, managing multiple priorities around studies, projects, volunteer groups. So when you are answering a question, don't just focus on what you have done at a place where you earned a paycheck. Focus on what you have done at school, what you've done in your community, in your church, within your family. Any of that is important, and they're all skills that transfer to all environments.
I would also add one thing. If you're looking at the job announcement, I would pay real attention to the language. Is it recommended that the candidate have a bachelor's, or is it required? Sometimes.
And is there
So
any
maybe-
follow-up language? Sometimes it's
Yes.
required or 10 years of experience in a relatable field or something like that.
Also learn about the company you want to apply for. Now that kind of got touched on earlier, but I spent hours scouring the SRJC website, not looking at the mission statement, memorizing the mission statement. I had my wife, quiz me to make sure that I remembered all, so it's, and maybe that was over the top, but you need to come in knowing the company that you want to work for and be able to articulate that so that they know that not only can you do the job, but you care enough about them to do the homework about them.
Excellent advice. A lot of good nuggets there. So let's see. Kevin, what do you think this is a little bit obvious, but maybe we can talk about it from sort of an entry point. What do you think the career outlook is for your field? Like I said, it's a little bit obvious, but what do you think? Like, where should people are earning certificate in IT or any area that you currently utilize in your job? What do you think the outlook is?
Well, not surprisingly, excellent in a lot of places. Certainly, the pandemic has exposed a lot of need for people that have expertise in remote work. I would say that in Sonoma County, from an IT standpoint, the market's okay, but if you're willing to move a little bit down into the Bay Area, into the East Bay, into the South Bay, into San Francisco, if you're willing to travel even a little bit, the market's essentially unlimited. There are unbelievable amount of jobs, both for entry level and upper level jobs. We definitely encourage, looking at, I've got teenagers at home, so fairly recently I've been bludgeoning them now that the pandemic's starting to ease to start looking for part-time work. So I've actually been looking at teenager and entry level job boards lately. Google is a great place to start. But you'll find even in Sonoma County, there's some places like sonic.net where you can get in on the ground floor in the IT department. Heck, even, we hire part-time and temporary help in the IT department here. But if you're willing to travel even a little bit, or if you want a total change, Austin, Texas, huge tech hub now and a really cool town. So those, if you're not afraid to relocate, there's all sorts of places where tech is king. And if you're into network security, the JC has just implemented a really excellent technical certification for network security. And there's some great instructors that I've been working with, Michael McKeever. And so if you're interested in that, reach out to me and I can, point you in the right direction to get started on that. But yeah, IT's sky's the limit, really.
I want to stop here just because we have about 9 more minutes, and I do want to open this up to anybody who might have a question for any of our panelists, either more about what we've discussed or anything else about career paths or salary trajectories, anything on anybody's mind that you'd like to ask the panelists.
Can I ask a panelist question?
Sure, Sarah.
I'm curious on each of your opinions on sort of this remote work. Do you see folks in your field or even in your own organizations desiring to stay remote, wanting to come back to the office? And how are you going to navigate? I feel like these next 6 months will be a lot of navigating sort of a return to normalcy. So curious on how each of you see that rolling out at your own organizations.
I can go. So I know that we're going back 2 days a week starting next week, and then it's going to we do have we've talked about the fact that we really like working from home. It eliminates having to commute so much. So we may stay on that 2 days a week for a while. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm hoping.
So I just read some HR article. I don't remember what the source was right now, but there was a study done, and I think 26% of the workforce wants to stay remote. Only 49% wants to stay in some sort of a hybrid, so combination of in office and work from home, and 25% wants to be back in full time in the office. I think if business owners are thinking that we're going to all go back in the office and it's going to be business as usual, I don't think they're taking a really clear look at the picture. I think the horse has left the stable and it is going to be hard for any business owner or business leader to emphatically state that someone cannot be productive if they were fully productive for the last year. However, I do think that certain organizations, my own in particular, will have a really strong preference for having people be back in the office. And what I am advising our leaders to do is to just take it on a case by case versus issue straight up mandates across the board, because I think it's really important that we look at our employees' needs and what balances their own personal desires and the needs of the organization. Otherwise, I think we would experience some significant turnover. So we are about 85% of our employees are currently working remote. I would anticipate by August, we will start to transition more people into the office, but I don't know that we will be 100% in the office full-time this year. I think maybe someday, but it's going to take some time for people to feel comfortable being back in the office.
Sarah, do you really want me to answer this question? This feels like a third rail question against the circumstances.
You don't need to answer.
Feel free to exempt me from this one. I recuse.
You can recuse yourself. But Marissa, I'm curious about the county. You know, what is the county's perspective?
So there are county departments that have been open this entire time during the pandemic, such as health services, human services. We are opening, all other departments that have been closed to the public are opening to the public on Monday, the 19th for partial hours. And specifically in human resources, I believe we will have kind of a hybrid model that Goretti was speaking of. But I think it's really going to be on a department by department basis based on the services that they're offering to the community. Personally, I like the hybrid model, going into the office for certain functions, certain meetings, and then also teleworking.
Even as an introvert, I miss human contact a lot. I mean, I've got my family here, which is great, but man, I do miss, walking through the building and saying hi to people. And yeah, it's tough. It really is.
Well, I guess the last thing that I'd like to ask each panelist is, how did you think SRJC was instrumental just in terms of setting you up for success or providing opportunities that you might not have considered had you not enrolled in a program or classes at the JC? You can start with Karen.
It gave me a really good base for wanting to grow. Taking the courses at the junior college, which is funny because it was so long ago. I graduated in '81 and I went there right after. And I did.
81 rules. Sorry.
And I went to Santa Rosa High too.
Then you and I went to high school together. Okay, we'll figure that out later.
Okay.
I'm also 81.
And so
Go check out the yearbook.
And what was I going to say? Now I forgot.
Sorry.
That's okay. Oh, just how it set me up for, I love learning. So I was so thrilled to be in school learning and being around all the students. And so when I went back to school, I did it because I was going to change careers and I was going to go into IT. And yeah. And USC was really a good place to go for what I did. And then that just set me up for my career path going from, I went straight to a job in the city. And so that was good. It was, the JC was a really good starting point for me.
Marissa, I'll go to you.
I know we're almost out of time. I'm going to say the biggest thing that I took away was discipline, just going to class every day and turning in assignments, and discipline has really helped in my career progression.
And Goretti?
Absolutely, just the discipline and the accountability. And I think also the academic standards. It was not easy. And if anything, it may have been harder than, transferring out. So I think, the effort that it takes to be successful within the JC education structure absolutely sets you up for any future project or objective that you have in any role.
Awesome. What about you, Kevin?
It's interesting. You guys have all sort of called attention to sort of the rigor that the JC applied and how that affected you. But for me, that's true. But for me, the vast landscape of opportunities to learn things I didn't know anything about, and I found myself just fascinated by, I want to do this. No, I want to do this. And I struggled. I have to admit, I took a long time to get through college because I kept changing majors. I thought that was the most amazing thing. So for me, it really opened me up to having a very, very restless curiosity about the world. And it really played, I'm a generalist by nature, and that's what it did for me, is it caused my restless curiosity, I guess, to know about a little bit about a lot of things. That really played into that for me. So that's kind of what I got, and got me started down that sort of life path.
Great. Well, Sarah, I'm going to let you close this out, but I want to thank everybody for joining, thank our panelists and everybody who's in the room. It was really interesting, really fun to hear about the past, the opportunities, and kind of how you all worked through and navigated the pandemic in their careers. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll echo Anne's comments and thank our really wonderful panelists for sharing their careers and their insights about how they have navigated the pandemic and what's coming next. Really appreciate all of you. And for our students and other folks who are in attendance, if you are looking to get connected into great folks like these to help you navigate and ask questions and figure out your own careers, definitely get on SRJC's Job Speaker Board. There is a mentoring program on there, and you can find folks on there who are ready and willing to help you in any career question that you may have. So appreciate these folks. Thank you guys so much for coming, and we will see you next time.